Good morning, everybody. I'd like to call to order the open meeting for Thursday, August 3rd, 2023, and ask the Commission Secretary for information on today's agenda.
Each commissioner has independently reviewed the minutes of the open meeting of Thursday, July 20th, 2023, and each has informed me there is no need to discuss the minutes.
I move we approve the minutes of Thursday, July 20th, 2023.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Each commissioner has independently reviewed the agenda, and each has informed me there is no need to discuss the notices associated with agenda items 2 through 27, or the draft notice of hearing in docket 5 EI 160 associated with agenda item 28.
I move that we approve the notices of investigation associated with agenda items 2 through 11 and 13.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. And I move we approve the notices of proceeding associated with agenda items 12 and 14 through 27.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then I move we approve the notice of hearing associated with agenda item 28.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that brings us to agenda item 29, which is docket 1-IC-546. This is an intervenor comp request filed by Clean Wisconsin for its participation in docket 4220-CE-185, which concerns the application of Northern States Power Company to repower the Wheaton Generation Station. So the applicant, Clean Wisconsin, is seeking, where am I here? We have a lot of IC. The applicant filed a request for IC totaling $100,020. And they state that some of its members live, work, and recreate in Chippewa County and will be affected by the issues in the underlying docket. In particular, they state that their consultant, MRW and Associates, would analyze claims for the need for system resiliency during extreme events and claims the project is an economic source of capacity. So for us, when we evaluate IC requests, we turn to both the statute and the administrative code. And all of the applications have to meet the eligibility requirements, both under the statute and under the code. And one of the main criteria to be able to award IC is that the participation of that particular party is necessary to provide for the record an adequate representation of a significant position in which the participant has a substantial interest, and that an adequate representation would not occur without the grant of compensation. So when I look at that as meaning that the information the applicant proposes to place into the record will not be duplicative of other information that will be in the record, right? So in a lot of cases, we'll see an intervener come in and they will have a particular lens through which they view the docket that isn't captured by either staff or any other party. In this particular case, when I read through the proposed work plan, especially from MRW and Associates, I couldn't find anything in that work plan that made me comfortable that it was additive to the analysis that was already being done by staff. So in this particular case, I think that staff's analysis is going to cover what this applicant is claiming they need the funds to cover. And in my mind, that doesn't satisfy the statute, and it's not an efficient use of IC dollars. So for this case, I'm at alternative 3. I would deny the request because it fails to satisfy the eligibility criteria. Commissioner Huebner?
Yeah, thank you for that. I wasn't sure where to be on this one or where I was on this one, so I'm looking forward to the discussion today. Without getting into it, the application itself has a lot of confidential information that is, it's a uniquely situated power plant. It's not the same as we might look at any other or most of the applications that we might be looking at. And so there certainly is some pieces of the work proposed by MRW that I think wouldn't satisfy some of the needs that the applicant has set forth for this particular plant. So I was open to possibly reducing it or denying it. So maybe I'll see where Commissioner Strand's at, and then we'll see.
Okay?
Yeah.
Sounds good. Commissioner Strand?
Thank you. So I want to start by saying that I think the role of interveners is very important in our process, and I'm very supportive of what they do. But I am in the exact same place as Chair Vach. I think that this would be duplicative, and I don't think it would add much more. And I'm also concerned about just our intervener comp budget for this fiscal year. I know we're going to have a lot of requests, and I want to make sure that we're not just handing money out early and then playing catch-up later. So I am at alternative 3 as well.
Okay.
Okay, I can join you there.
Okay.
That puts a motion in for docket 1 IC 546. I move that we do not approve the request for IC.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. That moves us to agenda item 30, which is docket 4220-EI-109. On March 8th, Energy Concepts LLC filed a petition requesting that we grant a waiver of the administrative code related to individual electric metering requirements for a newly constructed building. This is intended to be a permanent waiver of the individual metering requirements under the code. Northern States Power Wisconsin is the utility for the requesting party. And really what we have in this particular case is it's a new development that is going to be managed by a nonprofit, and the utility service will be billed to the sort of property manager, Prairie Heights Residences LLC. The development will consist of 60 apartment units and a 54-stall underground parking garage. This project is being developed under the Wisconsin Housing and Economic Development Authority, Section 42 Low Income Program. Because of this, 85% of the households occupying the property will be at or below 60% of the county median income. 12 units have been reserved for homeless and disabled veterans. Additionally, the development will include a community services facility that is open to the public. They plan to install 3 solar array systems, and they also estimate that these solar array systems will offset 20% of the development's annual energy needs. All utility services will be included in the tenant's rent, and electricity will not be resold. Non-payment of rent will result in eviction process rather than service disconnection. So while the building will utilize a central air conditioning unit and furnace, each tenant will have control over the temperature of his or her own unit. Individual units will be heated using a centralized variable refrigerant flow heat pump system, which, as a side note, I think is fascinating technology. It's really fascinating. Tenants will have control over an Energy Star rated refrigerator, range, microwave, dishwasher, and stacked laundry units. We have seen a lot of these requests for waivers of the metering rules. And the purpose of the metering rules is really, it's twofold. So the first is to ensure that proper price signals are being sent to individual users of electricity. And then the second is to ensure that customers aren't being disconnected for use that's not related to their own use. And as technology evolves and as new developments employ these new technologies, and as buildings become more energy efficient, we're seeing a plethora of requests for waivers of the code. And the code is very specific in terms of when we can grant a waiver. So there are various exemptions to the requirement that this individual metering be installed. The first exemption is for transient multi-dwelling buildings, such as community-based residential facilities, residential care apartment complexes, or similar facilities. So that's one way that you can craft an exemption. If it doesn't meet that exemption, your analysis has to stop. And this is a case, if anybody heard Cindy Smith's podcast debut last week, which if you haven't, I highly suggest that you go to the Electric Wire and listen to her podcast. But Cindy really plainly stated that there are times that commissioners have to set their personal beliefs or their personal view of a matter. You have to set that aside, and you have to look at what's in front of you, and you have to read what is applicable in any given situation. This is a case for me where I have to put my own personal preference aside, and I have to focus on the law. And the law is written in such a way that I cannot provide an exemption. This facility does not qualify for an exemption, nor does it qualify for a waiver. And as much as, from a personal standpoint, I would love to wave my magic wand and grant the permanent waiver, I can't do that based on the way that the code is written as I sit here today. And I'm not willing to do that. I never have been willing to do that. So while it may be frustrating, I think this is a case that underscores the need for legislative change, because similar to what we've seen with PSC 119, our industry is constantly evolving, and some of the requirements that have been in place for 15, 20, 30 years haven't kept up with the evolution of technology and the application of those technologies. So as painful as it is for me, because I think that this is a great project, I think that the energy efficient measures that have been installed are laudable, and I think that that is going to help us decarbonize the housing sector. At the end of the day, my job is to look at the requirements under the code. And when I look at the requirements under the code, this application unfortunately does not meet the requirements. So I'm at alternative 3 for the waiver. And then like I said, my analysis stops because I would deny their request, and so conditions aren't necessary. Commissioner Huebner?
Okay.
I said it wrong. It's Alt 2. Sorry, I said it wrong. It was Alt 2 under the exemption.
Yep.
And then for the waiver, it's Alt 3.
3.
I misspoke.
Yeah, this was certainly, it's a unique building. It's in ways because of the public housing nature of the situation. And they certainly are investing a lot in the energy efficiency. For me, I would grant the waiver and almost wonder if there's an exemption under PSC 113, because under 113.0803, there's another subsection that's not really talked about in the memo, but it is in one of our footnotes that the commission has utilized this before, and that's on page 3 under footnote 1. And it's the docket 6690 EI 112. Where the commission there found that, they found two things. They found that the electric usage under tenant control was minimal, but then they also found that individual metering would not be required if the housing project were new construction under this exact section of code, but subsection 4C. And 4C starts out with 4 reads, for the purpose of carrying out the provision of sub 1 being install individual electric meters in every unit. It says, for the purposes of carrying out those provisions, individual unit metering will not be required. And it goes on under sub C to say, or when alternative renewable energy resources are utilized in connection with central heating, ventilating, and air conditioning systems. So I'm looking at that to read that when you're utilizing alternative renewable energy, which solar PV would qualify in connection with the central HVAC, which I see this building as having central HVAC, that individual unit metering is actually not required.
But this is only, that only offsets 20% of that central
Well,
needs.
it said, from what I read, it offsets 20% of the entirety of the building's usage. So I don't
Yeah,
know
but-
what percentage that would have been of the central.
So I don't agree with your interpretation, which
Okay.
is fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would have granted the waiver under 4C then.
But not the exemption.
I talked about this with staff a little bit. I think if we do an exemption under this interpretation, that theoretically these buildings wouldn't even need to come to us because they're just exempt. You know, the record did indicate that a municipal utility has allowed this developer to do exactly this in a utility service territory, that they didn't oppose it. And so, there may be some uncertainty there, but I guess I would have done it as a waiver so that we would continue to look at these on a case-by-case basis, so.
Okay, but, so are you suggesting, are you creating a new alternative?
Yeah, I think that you could possibly do it under the exceptional and unusual of alternative two, but I think that there's another code provision here that more directly applies to the situation, which is the 4C, and that would basically be a different alternative for the waiver, yeah.
Okay. So you're creating an alt 4.
Yep, I think so.
Okay. Okay. Commissioner Strand?
Thank you. So I just want to start off by saying that I too think this is an excellent project. I commend the developer and WIDA for undertaking this, and I hope that we have more of these statewide. But I agree with Chair Bach's analysis. I don't think that this qualifies for a waiver, or excuse me, for an exemption, so I am at the position to deny the exemption. I appreciate Commissioner Huebner's creativity in looking for a way to find a code that we can tie the waiver to, because I wish that we could waive this and allow them to proceed, but I just don't think it meets the criteria that we have to work within. So I was also at denying the waiver as well, even though I don't want to, and I'm setting my personal preference aside, like Cindy said.
right.
So I'm in the same position as Chair Bach.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
So do you can do the
You'll have to
motion?
make the motion.
Yep.
Yep.
So for this item, I move alternative 3 as it relates to the exemption, and alt 2 as it relates to the exemption, and alternative 3 as it relates to the waiver.
Yes, okay. I second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Okay,
No.
all right. That moves us to agenda item 31, docket 6220-TE-108. This is the application of, WPPI Energy on behalf of its member utility, Waterloo Water and Light Commission, filed a request for approval of an unmetered telecom equipment service tariff, which is tariff TE-1. So this is the first of WPPI member utilities to apply for this type of tariff. They did largely model it after an existing TE tariff on Wisconsin Electric Power Company's tariffs. And what that does is it allows for equipment from a telecommunications or radio transceiver to take power but not be metered. And the reason for that is because the amount of electricity that's being consumed is so low that it would actually cost more money to meter it. And so it is a fairly, I think we would see this from additional WPPI members if we decide to approve this tariff. The tariff would be open to local exchange carriers, and those customers would only be allowed to install equipment that draws less power that can be practically or economically metered. And so because of that, there are really important provisions of the tariff. And the Waterloo Utilities filed a response to staff's memo about some of those conditions. And given the fact that this is the first one and we can expect additional tariffs like this to come in, I think it's important that we get it correct. So I am going to vote to approve the tariff. I am specifically at alternative 2. So there were some modifications that were suggested in our memo. One would be, and they were also accepted by the applicant. So on page 13 of our memo, I'm at alt 2. I would approve it as modified, including subalternative A, subalternative B, but the first part of B. So in subalternative B, we had a choice. We had to pick one or the other. And I would go with the first part of subalternative B, which is modify condition of delivery 17 to reference Wisconsin Administrative Code 113-0406, paren 4 specifically. Subalternative D, subalternative E, subalternative F, and I would also use the streamlined provisions that are shown in footnote 15. So I was a little confused when I read the alternatives because the alternatives didn't necessarily seem to capture what was identified in that footnote 15, and footnote 15 takes up half of the page. And so it's important information. And my understanding of the response filed by the utility is that they agree with what's contained in footnote 15, sorry. So I would include that. And then in terms of delegation, because I'm comfortable with these modifications, I am also then comfortable delegating future approval to the administrator of the Division of Energy Regulation and Analysis, and that's provided the requests don't raise novel or new policy issues. So I'm at alt 2, I would accept subalts A, B, D, E, F, and I would use the language in footnote 15. Commissioner Huebner.
Excellent summary. I'm in almost the exact same spot. I think, just maybe high level, I think it's a good tariff. We're seeing, obviously, the expansion of broadband and other telecom, which we know is a huge priority for the state. So thinking about how we can maximize the use of the poles and the infrastructure to help expand broadband and expand telecommunications is I think generally a great thing. So I'm in the same spot as you with most of these, Chair. So I'm at alternative 2. I agree with the footnote, so the streamlined version that's in footnote 15. So I would accept that. I also accept subalternatives A and B. The first part of B, as you said, exactly the same. D and E. As far as F, I would not do that. I guess I would not put it in its own rate class, just because I guess I view rate classes as kind of bigger buckets, and this presumably is going to be a pretty small subset. So it seemed like staff was fine with tracking it as a sub-account, and that we would be able to keep the accounting square that way, and that seems to make more sense to me as opposed to breaking it out as its own class. So I guess I would be at not accepting F. The other thing that was brought up in my briefing was that the 5,000 watts was pretty high. And so I would just, as a part of this delegation, just have staff work with the utility to have a better understanding of how much, you can definitely meter 5,000 watts, right? That's like as big as a house. So if there's a smaller limit on that, that makes more sense, I think we should look at that. So I would just put that, work with staff in on that. And as far as delegation, I've been at Alt 2 on these when I see them for the first time, just because I don't know what might change. I don't want to copy and paste something 41 times and then realize that we missed a condition. So I guess I like to do maybe 2 or 3 before we just have it on copy paste. So I was leaning towards Alt 2 for this first one.
Okay.
Okay.
Commissioner Strand?
Thank you. I was in the exact same spot as Chair Bach. So alternative 2 to approve the tariff, subalternative A, the first part of subalternative B, D, E, F. I really liked the streamlined process outlined in footnote 15 and kind of wish that that had made its way into the alternatives, but I'm in support of that. And then we did have a good conversation with staff regarding delegation, and I'm comfortable with alternative 1 as it relates to delegation. But also with the caveat, like
Yeah.
Commissioner Huebner said, to continue working with staff and making sure, especially at those higher thresholds,
Yeah.
that we're in good communication there. So those are my positions on that. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
All right, you ready?
Yep.
Oh, just to confirm, you included F,
Yes.
sub-alternative.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
I'll note your dissent on
Yep.
the sub-alternative, and where are we on the working together? I'm not sure,
Oh, did you
Oh, on
want
the
that as a
5,000. I was
order
just
point?
gonna add that as a,
because we
Minute,
either
maybe.
kind of have are you approving the tariff with the 5,000 watts, or are you saying we're not approving with 5,000 watts, you want to see a different level? Or
I'm-
just continue to monitor and, if it appears we're
Yeah.
coming up to the limit, 5,000's okay for the tariff, but we really don't envision
Yeah.
5,000. That's the kind of working. I'm just trying to get clarification as to.
my view on that was, my understanding was the 5,000 came right out of the WEPCO tariff that this was based on, but that number was much higher than the equipment we'll use. So my approach was work with staff and see if a lower number is more appropriate when the final tariff is approved through our delegation here.
I'm okay with the 5,000 on this one.
I'm fine with 5,000.
Okay, all right, so I'll good on that too. Okay. I will make the motion, though, in 6220 TE 108, I move that we approve the unmetered telecom equipment tariff consistent with our discussion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sorry. In the delegation, are you dissenting? Do we want to break that up, or are you okay delegating the future application?
I'll just join on that.
Okay.
Okay.
So consider that motion applicable to the delegation as well.
Okay, so it encompasses the delegation.
Yes.
Got it. All right. Okay. Did you second? I did. Sorry. Did I already say all in favor?
I think we've already
Yeah,
voted.
we're
It
good.
was- I wasn't
Okay.
sure we were going to take a
Sure.
separate
All right.
on the delegation as to where Commissioner Huebner was.
Look at
That's
that.
okay, I'll make it easy.
Okay.
I tried to make it easy.
All right. Okay. Now we're moving on to agenda item 32. So the next 2 agenda items have confidential information. I'm going to keep it really high level. They're both similar dockets. The first is 6630-GP-2022. This is Wisconsin Electric Power Company's gas supply plan. There were discovered some contracts that were included in the supply plan that did not receive the necessary approval from us prior to the utility entering into those contracts. So there is very specific language in existing dockets and the purchase gas adjustment tariff that says the company has to come to us and get approval, and that the filing for approval needs to be made no later than 21 business days prior to a significant event happening under the contract. That didn't occur in this case, and it didn't occur in the next case. either. When you get to the end of the analysis, really, the failure to obtain or seek our approval was due to a misunderstanding of the process. The applicant in both cases stated that they were under the impression that these contracts would not require our approval. But it was only after the fact that they realized, because of some of the terms associated with the contracts, that approval was indeed required. So we have a couple of alternatives in front of us, and we see this oftentimes on the water side, where there was a failure to seek our approval, and now the contract's been signed, and there are dollars that can be recovered. And so our decision is, do we allow for that recovery to occur? Do we issue a letter of reprimand, or essentially do we do nothing? So in both of these cases, because it was inadvertent, and I don't think it was intentional, I'm at alternative 3. So I would issue a letter of reprimand, and because I think it's important that those letters of reprimand get into the file, so to speak, so that the next employee that comes into that position understands what the requirements are. But because it was a misunderstanding, I would still allow the applicant the ability to recover those costs through their purchase gas recovery mechanism. So I'm at alt 3 in this one. Commissioner Huebner?
Yeah, thank you. I was at alternative 2, and I think issuing the letter of reprimand, as you said, the accountability that, the process wasn't followed is really important. I guess from the information I thought, from my briefing, it sounded like there was really some missing internal controls on this, that purchases were made that may not have even been necessary. So I thought there was a significant enough miss for these utilities are large operations that know how to do these things, that I was actually at alternative 2 and would not allow them to recover the costs associated with these
Okay.
issues. So.
Commissioner Strand?
I was at alternative 3 on this one as well. But I do think the letter of reprimand should include some language about internal process improvements to ensure that this doesn't happen again. Because I do think it was an oversight, like you said, but I would like them to clean it up. So I'm at alternative 3. Thank you.
Okay. You want to do the motion?
For item 32, I move alternative 3.
Okay. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
All right. That moves us to agenda item 33, which is docket 6650-GP-2022. Same issue, different company. This is Wisconsin Gas LLC. I'm in the same position. I'm at alt 3, issue the letter of reprimand, but allow the ability to recover. Commissioner Huebner?
Yep, I'm at alt 2 again.
Okay. Commissioner Strand?
Alt 3 again.
Okay.
So I move for item 33, I move alternative 3.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
Okay. All right. So that concludes our business during the open meeting portion. We are now going to recess the open meeting and go into closed session to discuss litigation matters with our legal counsel. And so we are going to close the session under Wisconsin statute section 19.85, sub 1, sub G.
Okay, I move that we go into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Stats 19.85, sub 1, sub G.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, I'd like to reconvene the open meeting pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.85.2. While we were in closed session, we discussed Agenda Item 34, and we provided guidance to the delegated commissioner. As it relates to docket number 35, Agenda Item 35, sorry, I would ask for a motion from Commissioner Huebner.
Yep, and we move that the commission approve the joint comments for submittal to the EPA.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that concludes our official business for today. The next open meeting is scheduled for Thursday, August 10th, 2023 at 10:30 a.m.
I move we stand adjourned until Thursday, August 10th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.